All right, so we made it. Chapter 11. This is it, y'all. It's getting real. So chapter 8 and chapter 10 were a little bit more on the review side, a little bit more on the I don't want to say bland side, but chapters 8 and 10 are intentionally just more review and simpler because traditionally I would give you more time to work in groups during class periods. So I'm sorry that it wasn't as enriching as maybe you wanted it to be, but definitely feel free to go through those PowerPoints and read through anything that I skipped over too quickly or that you would like more in-depth information on. But chapter 11 I think is a little bit more fun, has a little bit more information to it. So when it says handling customers' special nutrition requests, I love that. Now, I mean, it's becoming more common for people to want different variations of food that's on menus. You've got a lot of different people becoming vegetarian, vegan. You've got paleo, keto, you've got gluten-free, you've got all kinds of different requests that are coming at you. So this chapter I think is really great for you to start thinking about if you haven't already started thinking about those different kinds of requests, and this will help you in your group project as well. So part of our learning objectives today: identify appropriate ingredients menu items when customers request foods low in calories, saturated fat, sugar, or sodium. You've already been practicing this on your own by utilizing your 3-day food log and then answering questions based on the nutrient analysis given by MyFitnessPal and answering those questions on your homework. So you've already been doing that. This would just be to a larger scale. This would just be you identifying those requests and applying those changes to different menu and plates. So describe how to set up a food allergy management plan. We don't go in depth, but we do talk about food allergies. Identify gluten-free foods that are appropriate for people with celiac disease, including examples of how to avoid cross-contact during food preparation, and identify appropriate ingredients and menu items when customers request low lactose or vegetarian foods. So special diet, like I said, requests are becoming more common. So here are some basic preparations that you can do ahead of time. Meats can be marinated or utilize rubs with no salt, so you can control if there's salt or no salt. So this would be somebody who may have heart disease. I very rarely see those requests, but that is something to keep in mind. You can blanch vegetables, we talked about that, and then reheat in a small amount of stock or olive oil, so then you can control how much fat is utilized and the flavor and of those vegetables, but you can make those separately and then incorporate them as needed into the dish. Dips and chips for appetizer, you can include hummus with whole wheat tortilla chips, so these are just different options. Well-balanced dressing, the book keeps coming back to this, and then balanced desserts such as those based on fruit. So for lower calories, when someone's requesting that, or lower saturated fat requests, these are some options. You can ask for the portion size to be smaller. I do that when I eat out at diners. I ask always if there's a half portion size available because that's just as filling and it's way less food for me. Ask if there's different sizes of an entree. That's what I said. Yeah, perhaps half size. Sorry, that's like kind of a repeat. Sorry. Allow customers to share an entree. Yeah, I sometimes do that. Offer to have sauces or dressings on the side. Make sure that you have some balanced sides. Choose balanced cooking methods and have them available on the menu. And have balanced sauces and dressings as well as fruit-based dessert choices. So here are some menu choices that are lower in calories. You can definitely feel free to look over these. I'm just giving you time to look through them now, so you don't have to go back and reread. So not no fried foods, but offering options for foods that are not just fried. So this is really up to you. I mean, and if you're working under somebody, then it's really up to the manager, really up to the owner of the restaurant that you're working at. But these are just options. Low to moderate use of fatty foods. So you are already familiar with all these things. You are already becoming little nutrition pros, so you'll already know how to adjust low calorie, low fat, low salt, low sugar. You'll be able to do all of that after this class. So great job to all the hard work. Like, I really much applaud you guys. This has not been an easy process with everything that's been going on. So way to hang in there. And I want to encourage you, I'm not reading through all these slides because I really do know that it's in you. The nutrition knowledge is seeping in as you continue to review and go through these lectures and prep for the test and do your homework assignments. You're already getting there. Especially with the group project, you get to apply everything you've learned. So these are biggest sources of, or big, I guess you could say, major contributors of saturated fat in the American diet. Sadly, a lot of these are good, yummy foods, huh? Just have to have them in moderation. As you know, I've been saying a diet that's high in saturated fat does contribute to heart disease. So I always mention this. You all are catching on. I see you incorporating those aspects of health and disease into your homework answers, so great job. But again, just risk factors for heart disease in case you're concerned about yourself or your loved ones. Any of these factors right here are risk factors for cancer, as well as diabetes, as well as kidney disease. So being able to incorporate nutritious food and exercise would really help with preventing these risk factors. Here are some menu choices that are low in saturated fat. So here's a great slide for you to refer back to as you're working on your group project. Here's an example. Low sugar requests, so you want to avoid products that have added sugars. But there's also, so this is complicated, right? The best thing to do, in my opinion, would be to make things from scratch, because then you're in control of how much sugar is put into those options. It's not necessarily just going with a low sugar product, because they'll add typically more fat or salt to substitute for that taste. So that might be something that you'd have to talk to your managers about. When it comes to your personal diet or for your group project, you're in control. So here are some examples of some things that, like for example, condiments that are high in sugar that you'll want to avoid, or just little changes that you can make. But some of the options like this, from the last couple chapters, incorporating more fruit is also a great option. So why might someone request low sugar? They might be somebody that has type 1 or type 2 diabetes, or they might be someone that has been diagnosed with prediabetes. They may have a high A1C, so because of that, somebody might request low sugar items. So here are some healthy eating habits for those with diabetes, and now these are healthy eating habits that I recommend for everybody that I speak to. Limiting foods that are high in sugar, as in simple carbohydrates versus complex carbohydrates. So portion control, eating a good ratio, I would say, of carbohydrate with protein and fat, healthy fat. Sorry, I didn't include that. Eating a variety of whole grain foods, fruits and vegetables every day for fiber, right? Those are the complex carbohydrates. Spreading meals and snacks evenly over the day. So rather than skipping all meals and then having one big meal at the end of the day, is counterproductive. You want to have small, frequent meals throughout the day. And then monitoring not only calorie intake, but really everything you guys have been doing with the MyFitnessPal. So this is something I'd recommend for anyone who's wanting to be healthy, anyone who's got heart disease or diabetes that's wanting to monitor their health better. These are tips that I would recommend to them. Here are some options to help reduce starch intake, though that's very rarely something that comes up. Low sodium, this should be review. 1 teaspoon of salt has 2,300 milligrams of sodium, which, if you remember, is close to, if not approximately the same as the recommendation of salt that we as in Americans should be ingesting. Processed foods are high in sodium. So if we think about that, 1 teaspoon of salt, wow, goes like. So for anyone who's cooking at home, which I know some of you who had done the 3-day food journal are, they were actually lower in their salt intake, which was really cool to see. But it's just a testament to eating less processed foods and having a lower sodium intake. So that's great. Here are some high sodium ingredients. So if you're working on your group project and you're able to eliminate some of these, that might reduce that sodium intake to make sure that you're underneath. I believe the recommendation that I included for this class is 2400. So here are also suggestions for what to avoid when on a low sodium diet. So I had mentioned bases in the last lecture. Commercial salad dressings I always bring up. You would be surprised. Bread and rolls that some people put on the top. Salt. Cured and smoked meats typically are high in salt. Depends, but yeah. Usually smoking involves a lot of salt. Depends how you're smoking it. So, alrighty, canned vegetables or beans. Yep. So here are some tips for how you can reduce sodium in cooking. Use less salt. That's a given. Train your staff to taste test, and before adding, yes, and taste as you go. You can try using kosher or sea salt because you can use a little bit less. So making sure that you definitely, I mean, when you're looking at it, like for example, you're looking at it, you can see which are more fine and which are thicker. So yeah, sea salt is thicker. So you wouldn't want to use a lot of that. Use fresh foods, of course. Ask vendors for low sodium products. Use umami to boost flavor. Well, that's a tricky one, so that one might be a hit or miss. Let me know about that one, because some people say umami comes from MSG, right? So in the last couple slides over here, we said let's avoid most Asian sauces that are pickled, brined, smoked, cured, but also MSG is right there at the salt, soy sauce, and MSG. So no. So when it comes to umami, you'll have to use products that naturally give an umami flavor. So something like Parmesan cheese, and that's the one that first comes to mind. But there are some other foods that have a natural umami flavor to it. And drain and rinse canned foods such as vegetables and beans, or you can buy lower sodium or no salt versions of them. Okay, so we're going to get into the difference between a food allergy and a food intolerance, which is really important because a food allergy is an abnormal response that's to a food that's triggered by your body's immune system, so this is more severe. The body sees a protein in a food as a threat, and the immune system responds. So that's why you see... okay, on the next slide I'm going to go into that, so I'm not going to jump the gun. Okay, versus a food intolerance is an unpleasant reaction to food that does not involve the immune system. Symptoms can include gas, bloating, or dizziness. So for anyone who's lactose intolerant, they may have experienced those symptoms. So here are common sites for allergic reaction. The mouth, you'll see swelling of the lips or tongue, itchy lips, airways, wheezing or breathing, digestive tract, stomach cramps, vomiting, diarrhea, skin, hives, rashes, or eczema. So these are all common sites and common allergic reactions. And I also included a YouTube video if you want to check some of that out. Here is a list. The following foods account for 90% of all food allergies. So there are more food allergies out there. We just include the most common ones in this book and in this lecture. Milk, eggs, peanuts, tree nuts, fish, and shellfish, soy, and wheat. And what I like is that here tree nuts, they say walnuts, pecan, almonds, and cashews. So these are something to be thinking about. Let's see. Okay, yes. On the next slide, I'll talk about steps for avoiding food allergy, like cross-contamination. So most cases of allergic reactions to food are mild, but some can be violent and life-threatening. If you watch that YouTube video, they talk about that. And can be caused by simply a trace amount of offending food. I once ate at a Korean food restaurant with a friend who was It was a group of friends. We were all eating and sharing food. That was a bad idea because midway through the meal, one of them decided to share that they had a food allergy to shellfish, and one of us had already cross-contaminated the food. So unfortunately, she swelled, and she had her EpiPen, thankfully, but yeah, it can happen very quickly. So we want to keep everything separated as much as possible. Whereas people with true food allergies must avoid the offending foods altogether, people with food intolerances can often eat small amounts of the offending food without experiencing, well, they may experience symptoms, but maybe not nowhere near severe as a food allergy. So, decide who will be answering the guest questions. So, will that be the waitress or the waiter? Someone who is designated to discuss allergy concerns with customers. So, maybe a GM, a general manager, or maybe the chef. Definitely check with the chef to make sure the item is prepared correctly, and then make sure the person who's been helping the customer is the person that delivers, because they're the one that knows about the allergy, making sure there's no cross-contamination. Thinking about who will be responsible for keeping recipe information up to date, and check ingredients used in menu items. What steps will the kitchen and wait staff take to avoid cross contact, and how should staff handle an allergic reaction? So these are all questions you would want to be thinking about as you're developing a plan for avoiding food allergies. All staff needs to be trained, definitely. We should all know what are the different allergies that are allergens. Sorry, what are all the different allergens that our dishes contain? So we should know all of that ahead of time. So it says, for example, cooks need to know that these are myths. Okay, small amounts of an allergen are okay? Nope. Even small traces of the allergen can cause an allergic reaction. The cooking heat will destroy the allergen? Nope, that is not always the case. And it's safe to remove an allergen from a finished dish? No, you can't really go back on that. So here's an option if you want to substitute eggs. And here it says you want to avoid all menu items that include eggs in any form, which is lecithin, globulin, or albulin. So you'll be looking, if you're looking at the ingredient list on a packaged food item, then you'll see that. Peanut allergies actually surprisingly unexpectedly can come in Asian and Mexican dishes, because some sauces such as pesto, gravy, salad dressing, condiment, specialty pieces, so you'd be really surprised. So it's really important that you are looking at the ingredient list of products. We had to do that in the kitchen I worked at a few times just to be on the safe side. It's really interesting that peanuts can go by other names such as beer nuts, ground nuts, goobers, or monkey nuts. So this is just very interesting. I did not know that until I read through and prepped for this lecture. So tree nuts, there's even more than the last slide showed us. We only discussed pecans, almonds, walnuts, but none of these. So macadamia nuts, coconuts, all of these. Poor anyone who has tree nut allergies. I'm sorry, that's really tough. Peanuts are classified separate from this group. And unexpected sources of tree nuts include pasta, honey, breading, salads, and dressings, and meat-free burgers. Milk allergy, yes, some people not just have lactose intolerance, some people have actual milk allergies. So there can be hidden sources of milk in luncheon meats and that are sliced in the same location as where the cheese is sliced. So got to be careful about that cross-contamination. Avoid all dairy products such as casein, caseinate, ghee, lactoalbumin, lactose, lactulose, and whey. Soy allergy, soy products can be found in baked goods such as crackers, cereals, soups, sauces, as well as other foods, and most individuals allergic to soy can eat soy lecithin or highly refined soy oil, but I wouldn't recommend it. I would actually ask if you had a guest that had a soy allergy, if they've had experience with that or not, and maybe just avoid that in general. You don't want to be held liable. So wheat-free diet. Some people have wheat allergy. Wheat allergy is not the same as celiac disease. Yeah, wheat is hard to avoid. We go into gluten-free products later. Okay, shellfish allergies. So they would need to avoid lots of things: crabs, crayfish, lobster, langoustines, prawns, shrimp, mollusks, krill, clams, oysters, mussels, scallops, abalone, snails, limpets, periwinkle, squid, octopus, cuttlefish, and surimi. So now we're getting into gluten-free. So this is really important. This is going to be in your Chapter 11 homework as well as in your group project. So with celiac disease, that is an inherited autoimmune disease. And when a person with celiac disease consumes any food, beverage, or medication containing gluten, which you would be surprised, right? And his or her immune system is triggered and responds by damaging the lining of the intestinal tract. So it's really intense, severe disease. So let's not play with that. Symptoms include abdominal pain, diarrhea, and or severe skin rash. Other people without celiac disease also have gastrointestinal symptoms after eating gluten. This is called gluten sensitivity. Gluten is found in wheat, barley, rye, or oats unless it is labeled gluten-free. So even with oats, unless it's labeled gluten-free, don't take a chance. To avoid gluten, check food labels for wheat, barley, rye, oats, triticale, malt, brewer's yeast, dextrin, and modified food starch. So there's a lot of opportunity for gluten to sneak in. So definitely remember this list of different food labels that contain gluten, different food products that contain gluten, and also remember this list. This is very important. Someone avoiding gluten can eat brown rice, wild rice, white rice, corn and cornmeal, amaranth, quinoa, millet, teff, sorghum, buckwheat, flax, starches, including potato, tapioca, arrowroot, and cornstarch. So these are all good, and you should know them for Chapter 11 homework. You can buy some gluten-free flours. There are some out there, but it is hard it is possible. It is possible to create bread products that, I've bought gluten-free bread from the store before just to try it out. Not a big fan. Some of the brands do well and other brands do not do well at all with the taste and the texture and everything. But I think Udi's is a really good brand for anyone who is gluten-free or has a friend or family member gluten-free. Udi's is a good brand. Sometimes when someone's making a gluten-free product, I should say, they use stabilizers such as gums like guar gum and xanthan gum. Staples of the gluten-free diet: fresh fruit and vegetables, plain meat, poultry, fish, dried beans, peas, nuts, seeds, and eggs, most milk, yogurt, cheese, and soy milk, grains such as rice, amaranth, quinoa, and then gluten-free oats, processed gluten-free breads, pastas, cereals, and baking mixes, as long as they say and they are distinctly labeled as gluten-free. So this is something to come back to as you're working on your group project, because there is a section where it asks about gluten-free and vegan. So not only can you think about utilizing these steps for avoiding cross-contamination of gluten-free products with gluten in the kitchen, you can also think about this when it comes to food allergies. So gluten-free food should be stored separately from other foods. Don't prepare gluten-free foods on the same surface as regular foods without thoroughly cleaning. Don't bake gluten-free and gluten-containing foods at the same time. It is best to bake gluten-free foods first. Always use separate dedicated equipment and utensils for gluten-free foods. You can't share foods such as butter. That's interesting. Don't deep fry gluten-free foods in the same oil as foods containing gluten, and be careful of possible cross-contact in toasters in the microwave. So a lot to keep in mind, but if you're already utilizing best practice and you're already in the groove and the habit of doing these things, then it becomes second nature. So for lactose intolerance, that just means that somebody is missing the lactase enzyme that breaks down lactose, which is the milk sugar. So instead of lactose goes to the large intestine instead of being broken down, and it attracts water and causes bloating and diarrhea. In addition, intestinal bacteria ferment lactose and produce gas. Symptoms usually occur within 30 minutes to 2 hours and then clear up within 2 to 5 hours. So, yeah. If you're lactose intolerant and you're still taking risks, I do not know why you're putting your body through that. It would hurt. Treatment for lactose intolerance, you can incorporate in your diet lactose-free products. You can eliminate or limit lactose products in your diet. Sometimes yogurt and hard cheese are tolerated better. And then, yeah, if you're going to eat or drink any milk products, I guess it would have to be in small consumptions, but in small portions. But you can not only lactose free, but you can also buy lactase enzymes, and that can sometimes help taking that before the meal or with the meal. We've gone over this, but this is a nice time for review. Lacto-ovo vegetarians mean they can eat dairy and eggs. Lacto vegetarians eat dairy or consume dairy but not eggs. And then vegans do not eat eggs or dairy products and rely exclusively on plant foods to meet their protein and nutrient needs. Also, vegans, if they truly are saying vegan, don't typically have honey in their diet either. So we're gonna go through. This is just FYI, fun facts. We're gonna just a review on complementary proteins, but you guys are already aware of these: legumes with grains, legumes with nuts and seeds, grains with dairy, legumes with dairy, and nuts and seeds with dairy. So these are different ways that you can pair incomplete proteins together, and then by doing that, you supplement whatever amino acids are missing from the diet, and you get complementary protein. So this is great so that way vegetarians and vegans can meet their nutrient needs. You can also utilize meat alternatives. I think it's so great that in this picture it's just like super processed vegan foods, but I mean, that is an option. But I do tell vegans that, I mean, if you're gonna become vegan, you have to be really committed to cooking more, because yes, you can eat these alternatives, but they're very processed. So typically very high in salt. These meat alternatives are typically soy or vegetable based. When it says vegetables, they're also typically wheat based. So if you're making a menu item that's vegan and gluten free, I would recommend making them a bean patty but not buying them, because typically, or like in your group project, I mean, don't recommend or don't rely on that, because most burgers and different products actually have wheat in them. So. And then some are fortified with important nutrients such as B12, vitamin D, calcium, iron, and zinc. Here are some guidelines for vegetarian meals. And then here are some, which I think are really fun, like the lentil paella. That would be kind of fun to try out. And then for vegan diets, these are some options, which I hadn't heard of egg replacer until I taught this class, which is really interesting. You should Google it. I had no idea. Now, yeah, they also have vegan cheeses. It's a hit or miss. You have to definitely try the different products out. It's a hit or miss with diet. I can't remember the brands that I've tried that I liked. There were some that I liked and some I didn't. So if you have a friend or family member, or you get into that business of different diets with the vegan diet, I definitely recommend trying out the different products that are out there. Thank you guys so much for joining me. Thank you for sticking it out with this class. I know it has been an uphill battle, lots of ups and downs, but you're getting through it. You're doing great. Message me, email me if you have any questions, comments, concerns, if you need help with anything. We've got 3 weeks left. We've got 3 homework assignments, a test, your group project, presentations. So there's a lot that's coming at us these next 3 weeks. So let me know how I can be of help. Thanks again. Hope you learned a lot.